All right, our last section in chapter 7 is 7-8, and it's dealing with circle graphs, but the reason that circle graphs go really well with chapter 7 is because circle graphs are all about percentages, and that's what we have been dealing with for the past 2 weeks, is finding percentages of two numbers or finding a number based on a percentage, and we're going to use all of that to kind of decipher these circle graphs and answer some questions about them. Okay, so first things first is let's just talk very briefly about what a circle graph is. So I'm just going to use the example in your notes here just to talk about parts of a circle graph and kind of what we're looking at. So obviously it's a circle. Sometimes it's also referred to as a pie graph. And it should all add up to 100%, right? If you think of 100% of the pie, 54% in this particular one is TV, 26% is newspaper, 8 is internet, and 12 is talk radio. So of all the people polled, 54% said they get their news from TV. So that's kind of how you read a circle graph. If you look at the circle graph, if you kind of come straight down the center, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that's about 50%, right? So it makes sense proportionally that 54% would just be a little bit past the 50 half mark, if that kind of makes sense. You're going to need to use that skill or that reasoning here in a minute, because we're going to build our own circle graphs, and you've got to be able to kind of think, okay, if it's a certain percentage, what would that look like as a small part of a whole pie? Okay, so we're going to be looking at that here in just a minute. But that's just kind of a very brief introduction into circle graphs. It's a way to give you data. It's a visual way to give you data, because you can very easily, without even having numbers, if I were to take away all the numbers and I were to ask you which one has the most people respond, you could easily look at this and say TV, because it's the biggest piece of the pie. Okay. All right. So we are going to start out by constructing our own. So we're going to do example number 1 here. And the first step is to draw a circle. So I'm not an artist, nor do I expect you to be perfect, but just try to do your best to give yourself a circle. Mine have not been all that great all day, but that's not bad. I can live with that. And right in the center, we're going to put a point, because that's kind of the hub of our circle. And that's where everything's going to spread out from. Okay. Again, I'm going to very lightly, right? Very, very lightly. Let's do really thin and kind of light here. I'm just going to give myself, if you want to do it with your pencil, just really lightly, I'm just going to sketch myself some kind of a framework to be able to see about how my circle graph breaks up. All right, if I'm looking at this, the way I have it sectioned off, how much is each one of my sections worth? 25. Yeah, because it's 4 pieces of 100%. So if you think about it, right, this would be a 25%, this would be 25%, 25%, and 25%. And the reason I do that is to give myself just some gentle guidelines to kind of see what makes sense. Well, what do I mean by that? Let's look at, I'm going to bump this back up now. All right, so let's look at this first section here, 29%. Oh, I didn't change colors. There we go, 29%. If I know that my rough sketch here is 29% of the pie, does it make sense then that I could come in here and go from here to a little bit more than 25%? And I could say roughly that that's 29%. Does that make sense on why I did that? I gave myself the 25 mark to kind of help me gauge where I'm going on that. Okay. So let's label this. So I'm going to go ahead and erase my sketching here just so it's cleaner, but you can erase it or leave it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But that is my none category. So I'm going to label it because this is allowance paid to 12 to 17-year-olds, and 29% said they don't get allowance at all. So none is the name, and you want to put the percentage. So for each one of your pie pieces, you're going to have the name of the piece of pie and the percentage that it represents. Okay. All right. If you think of what half the pie is, that's 50, right? Well, I just took up 29%. What does that leave for the other half of the pie? What's 50 minus 29? 21. Okay. No, yeah, 71. No, I'm not mean of the whole pie, just half. Because I'm still kind of trying to use my guidelines here to make things make sense. So if I'm just looking at half of my pie, I just used 29% of it, right? So if you think 50 minus 29, that should be 21, right? Do I have another pie piece up there that's really close to 21? Got a couple of them. You can choose between which one, Jace? All right. And you could have chosen the 19 or the 23. They're both equally close, but he said 19. So that's the one we're going with. Now, if I know that the remaining part of my half is 21 and I want 29, I'm just going to go a little bit shy of that, right? So I'm going to go about right here. And again, these aren't going to be perfect, but they're going to be close enough. Okay. And if I do that, then that piece of pie represents the $11 to $20 people. And how much percentage was that? 19%. So proportionally, my 29 and my 19 look good, right? My 29 is a little bit bigger than my 19. That makes sense. If I used, this one is kind of cool. I had 21 left over and I just used 19 of my half, right? How much do I have left over? 2. Do I have a percentage up there that's 2? I got 3 of them. So let's take one of them. So I'm going to come straight down. And I know that that represents a 2. Now, notice I don't have room to write in that sliver of pie. You will have some pieces that small. Just draw a line up to them and then label them outside. So that we'll call the $1 people. So this little sliver is $1 and they represent 2%. And now I can draw 2 more pieces of pie that exact same size and I get my other 2 taken care of, right? Because I have 3 2%ers. So let's just come down here and they don't have to be exact, but let's try. Let's make that worth 2% and that worth 2%. Close enough. And I got to label both of those. So let me erase this so I have room. So I draw a line to the first 2% and it represents the $2 people. So $2 and that's 2%. And then I draw a line to my other 2% pie piece and that represents my $3 people and that is also 2%. So I've got all my pie pieces labeled with the data that they represent and the percentage that they represent. Okay. All right. So now let's look at my little bottom 25%. If you think of, and I'll kind of use a highlighter and then I'll delete it. If you think of this bottom 25% right here, right? How much of it have I used? No, just that little bottom section, 4%, right? Because I got 2 little 2 sections out of it. So that means I've got about 21% left. Do I have something close to 21? Yeah, I've got 23. So I'm going to go ahead and go with, let me get that off there. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. And I know that up to the 25 mark is 21%. So I'm just going to go a little past that to give me my 15. Or I'm sorry, my 23. All right. So now I got to label that. And that was my, what group? That was my, is that my 6 to 10? Yeah, that was my 6 to 10 group. All right. So 6 to 10 group represents 23%. All right, so I have taken care of this 2%, this 2%, this 2%. I've taken care of the 23%. The 0%, they're not going to be on my pie graph because they don't have any representation as part of my 100%. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's just because I accidentally used a highlighter instead of a pen. It should, well, it should just look like that. It was just because I accidentally used a highlighter instead of a pen. All right. So I'm not going to have representation at all for the $4 people because they're at 0%. So that leaves me a 15% and an 8% for my last little portion of the pie to be taken up. That makes sense? Those are the only two I don't have on my pie graph. So I'm just going to draw a line that kind of divides this by 2/3. Close enough. So we're going to call the bigger piece my 15% group. So those are my $5 kids, and they represent 15%. And then my 8% kids are right here, and I can't fit their title in there. So I'm going to draw a line and write it out here. Those are my 21 and over. Those are they get a lot of allowance, right? Those are my good kids. So I have got a pie graph now, and proportionally it makes sense, right? I don't have any crazy big pieces that are supposed to be little, and I don't have any little pieces that are supposed to be big. Don't put this in your notes, okay? But just, this is what I'm looking to not happen. I don't want to see something like this called 50%. That's obviously not 50% of your pie graph. And then you come in here like this and you call this 10%. So do I expect them to be perfect? No, but should they make rational sense? They should, okay? All right. I want to skip number 2 for now. We'll come back to it because it's very similar to what we just did. And I want to do number 3 and 4, and then we'll come back up if we have time and do number 2, okay? All right. So number 3 is going off of the circle graph we looked at earlier, and it is news sources. So the little paragraph says, the circle graph at the right shows the results of a survey about how people get their news information. Suppose that 450 people were surveyed. So that's important information to know. 450 people were surveyed. How many more people watch television than read the paper? Well, here is our people that watch television right here. 54%. And here are our people that read the newspaper, 26%. So I need to know how many more people watch TV than read the newspaper. Well, I'm not given the number of people, I'm given a percent. But based on what we've learned so far in chapter 7, if I'm given a percent and I'm given the whole number of people, can I find a partial? Right? I can use the percentage equation that we've learned. So if I'm just looking at my TV people, I know that for the TV people, 54%, and I know that anything that's written as a percent goes over 100. 54% of, what's my total number of people here? 450, right? I know that 54% of 450 watch TV. So can I solve for X? And then I know how many people watch TV. And this is why circle graphs tie into the percentage chapter. It's because we need to learn how, or we have to be able to know how to find missing numbers, and we have to be able to use the percentage equation for that. So if we run this through our calculator, we get 100x when we do the butterfly equals 24,300, and we divide by 100 and divide by 100, and we get x equals 243. So we know that 243 people out of the 450 answered that they watch TV. Okay. Now let's do the same thing with the newspaper people. So we want to know 26%, right? 26%. So 26 over 100 represents the unknown number of people out of 450. And if we solve for that X, we're going to know the number of people that read the newspaper to get their news. So again, we cross multiply and we get 100x equals 11,000 what? 700. And we divide by 100 and divide by 100. And we get that 117 people get their news from the newspaper. So then the question that was asked of us was how many more people watch TV than use the paper? Well, we just have to subtract the two numbers. So we have to do 243 minus the 117. So that is the TV people minus the newspaper people. And that's going to tell us how many more watch the TV over the news. So somebody put that in their calculator and tell me what you get. Miss Borden? Okay, I'll let her know. Thank you. All right, what'd you get for your answer? What is it? Okay, so the answer is 126, and this is a story problem. So look at the final question and to see how we label this. What does it ask us? How many more people? So we answer 126 people. Always use the wording of the story problem to know how to answer your story problem. If it asks the number of people, answer it as people. If it asks the number of dollars, answer it as dollars. If it asks us the number of roses, then your answer would be roses. So just always make sure that your answer matches the question that was asked of you in the problem. All right, there's two ways to do this, and I want to show you both because I think they're both equally the same. I mean, I think they're both equally understandable. It just depends on which way you want to think about it. Okay, but we get the exact same answer either way, and I'll show you what I mean. So I found the number of people first, then I subtracted, right? What if I take the percentages? So if I take 54% of people watch TV minus the 26% of people that listen to the news or that get their news out of a newspaper, and I subtract those numbers, I should get 28, is that right? 28%. So the difference between the percentage of TV watchers and newspaper readers is 28%. Now, if I find 28% of 450, am I going to get the difference? So it just depends on whether or not you want to find the people, then subtract, or subtract the percentages and then find the people. It doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to get the same answer, because when you run this through the calculator, you're going to get 100x equals 12600. You're going to divide by 100, and you're going to get x equals 126. And so you're going to get the same answer either way. If that confuses you, don't even put that in your notes. Okay, if that makes sense. If the first way I did it makes sense to you, do it that way. If this way makes more sense to you, do it that way. But if it confuses you having two ways to do it, just forget I said anything and don't do it that way. I just wanted to show you that because it kind of is a little bit of a shortcut, but it's not a good shortcut if it confuses you, if that makes sense. So if that part didn't make sense, cross it off your notes. Just do it the way I showed you the first time. Okay. All right, I am going to skip number 4 because it's exact same kind of problem, right? You find the number of people that ride a bus, you find the number of people that walk, you subtract them, and that's your difference. So we're not going to work that one. I do want to show you this. It's not one, there's not one like this on your homework, but I still want to show you how to do it because there might be one up on your test, okay? Because it's all the same information. So I just want to be specific. What did they not give me here? Yeah, they don't give me the percent, but you guys have the knowledge from this chapter to find the percent, right? How many total people answered this survey? Add them up. It's 496 when you add up all those weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, and other people. If I divide the partial by the whole, I get 368 divided by 496. I get 0.74. Well, if I bounce, I make that 74%. So I now know that 368 is 74% of the 496. I can do that again for this one, divide by 496, and I get 54 divided by 496, and I get, 0.108. When I bounce, I get 10.8%. Let's round. Let's make that 11%. Okay. Then when I take 49 divided by the whole, by that 496, I get 0.098. Well, when I bounce, I get 9.8%. Let's round that to 10%. And then when I do that again, when I take 25 divided by 496, I get 0.05. And when I bounce, I get 5%. And now with those percentages, and we're not gonna have time to finish it, but with those percentages, I can then construct a circle graph by, again, doing my little, give yourself a guide, and then just section it off based on what sections add up to about 25, 50, 75, that kind of thing. Okay. All right. All the ones on your homework are ones that you need to do. There's only 4 questions, and number 4 literally is going to take you about 12 seconds to do. So number 4 is the easiest one. For those of you at home, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, or I can open up a Google Meeting to help.